Hey guys, what is up? I hope you guys had a very fantastic New Year's. I hope this new year brings you everything that you want or hope for, could dream of, and I hope we all work hard to accomplish our dreams and our motivations and our goals this year. Guys, I just hope it's a great year for you, and the fact that you get to spend time with me makes me feel pretty happy that you're spending time to talk about episode 6, Creature Commandos, episode titled Prietel Skillet. Now, something that I would prefer to call this episode is, play games, pay a big price, because it seems that no matter what these characters do, when they play the different games they play, each one of them are paying a big price for the decisions that they made. And so when we start off, we find our characters fleeing from the soldiers who are trying to protect the princess, and they are currently trying to kill the princess, and so they are in hiding and they're trying to find a way to get to the castle without, dying. And so we find that Nina and the bride have found refuge in a brothel. We find that Weasel has made some new friends and possibly a new wolf pack. And Dr. Phosphorus has made himself find a new friend in a house. And Rick Flag is trying to fight for his life. Now, when we see that Rick Flag's fighting for his life, they're trying to get whatever information they can from him, because if he has found out something that they do not know, they need to know as soon as possible, because what they are doing could possibly cause World War III. And as he is fighting for his life, they find out some information and a little bit about the realities of metahumans, and that there is plenty. And people aren't surprised by this. People aren't confused by the reality that there are metahumans in this world. And so then the nurse is going, telling him, who dropped Rick Flag off, and they realize that that is Eric Frankenstein. Now, we cut to Eric Frankenstein, and you realize that he is still not going to learn from anything, and he is still the person that we know and maybe love, if you like his violent tendencies, which is he's a very passionate person who only seems to find violent solutions to that passion that he feels. He brutally murders these guys on the plane. I'm not totally sure why he does. And he's going to try to complete the task that Rick Flag has given him in order to, in his mind, win the love of the bride. We slip into the brothel, and there's an interesting conversation with the bride and the madam of the house, which gets into what is better, what has more dignity, someone who sells their body for profit, or someone who sells their sword for profit. I guess they all kind of lead to the same thing in some ways, but there is that dilemma where, yes, we may sell our bodies to give pleasures to others, but you sell your body to end lives, to take away the life of others. Which one has more dignity? Now, in the real world, both of those places can lead to very dangerous situations, and you could probably pay the price in multiple ways being in those type of environments. But I thought it was an interesting question, and it was a little bit of a good clapback of saying, you can judge me, but you have this huge log in your eye. You might want to check it out before getting too critical of what we do. But then as that point starts to ferment, these two metahumans walk in, and we do find out in this episode that is what we call certain people metahumans, and which is kind of the DC trend anyway. DC kind of sticks with the idea of calling them metahumans because, the X-Men took mutants and other things. So metahumans it is, and we find out that, these metahumans are looking for fun, and, their barbaric games are about to win them a barbaric price. And we find out something that it made me think watching the show, that when weak men, and this could, when I say men, it could be anyone, when weak people get power, they tend to not do the right thing. I think we all remember watching Megamind back in the day, and the whole point of Megamind is you get this guy who's obsessed with superheroes, and he finally gets the power of a superhero, and he becomes a super villain. You could attach that to anyone. That it takes a true moral sense of good to do the right thing. And I think we've seen by watching this show that even with the creature Commandos, they have great power, but a lot of them aren't necessarily always going to do what the heroic thing is. Sometimes they'll do what the right thing is, but clearly their motivations are quite flawed, and they'll do evil things to other people, even people that we think might deserve it. And these metahumans are no different. These guys are greedy, barbaric dudes who, because they can't have their way with the woman they're trying to be intimate with for money, they're just going to try to end the lives of everyone. And that's where they come to pay the barbaric price from the bride. The scene where the bride's holding the heart of the dude and just squishes it shows a brutality that shows, in some ways, if it was different circumstances, she is technically just as evil as these men, but for this one circumstance, these guys are in the wrong, she's in the right, and she gets to be seen as a hero. But the reality is that she's just as barbaric, if not more, in some ways, than these guys. Or at least maybe she was in the past. She's been alive for a long time, so the fact that her maturity level is where it is at this moment shows that she's probably done some terrible things in her life as well. Just maybe not as bad as, I'll take that back, maybe not as bad as them, but also not as bad as like maybe Eric Frankenstein. But she's definitely done some terrible things that I'm sure she hasn't really taken account for. And we'll see what happens the next episode, because clearly part of that conversation she had with the madam has something to do probably with what happens in next week's episode. Which then we talk about the weak men and weak men gaining power. Let's talk about Dr. Phosphorus. Now, this episode focuses on Dr. Phosphorus. And something interesting about him is that he plays a moral game and he pays a big price. Now, him and his wife have a conversation about the fact that he is going to take money from these guys to do this project that they may be able to cure cancer, like for good. But the price is by taking money from these bad guys. And they think they have a moral solution to be able to take the money from the evil people and still do good without causing harm. And we learn that that is not how things go in life. You play games with evil people, you may pay an evil price, and that is what happens to Dr. Phosphorus and his family. Now getting into the price that was paid, Rupert Thorne in DC Comics is like this politician, mafia businessman, and in the show, he is the one that made the deal with Dr. Phosphorus. And basically they find out what was really going on with what Dr. Phosphorus and his wife were doing with the numbers and the calculations that they were sending to these authoritarian countries. Well, they brutally murder Dr. Phosphorus' family and make it seem like he was the one that killed them. Then they laugh and watch as they brutally kill, at least in their mind, brutally kill Dr. Phosphorus. Now, something that really spoke to me was, hey, talking about weak men, you do evil things. Don't be shocked when those evil things come back to haunt you, which is definitely what's going to happen to Rupert Thorne. Now, Dr. Phosphorus, on the other hand, who was someone who had this moral good to try to help people and do the right thing, now he is going to become not just maybe like Rupert Thorne, but maybe become just worse. just as much worse as Rupert Thorne is, to the fact that he is not afraid to kill children. So in the episode when he's hanging out with the kid in present time, I was worried about that kid's life, and I think that was on purpose for the writing, is that they wanted you to just feel that maybe that kid is going to end up dying too, to show you how evil and monstrous Dr. Phosphorus is. But I think the relationship with the kid was kind of highlighting that there is some element still in him that is good, but because of him in some ways being just as weak as some of these other characters we've seen, just in a different way, that he still had this evil desire within him, maybe because of his loss. And it's how he's learned to deal with his loss, is by being evil and gruesome and cruel to others, like the world was evil and gruesome and cruel to him and his family. Was really interesting watching how he, murdered all the other people, including Rupert Thorne, and the fact that he did kill Rupert Thorne's kids just shows that he was going a direction that maybe his wife nor his child would ever be happy with. But after he gets all this power, he takes over all of Rupert Thorne's businesses, and everything that was once Rupert Thorne's is now his, and he becomes this elite crime lord in Gotham. We finally get our first true glimpse at Batman. Now, we had a flashback that kind of showed Batman with a stake through his chest, but now this is like the true version of Batman, standing above the building, silhouette shining down at our villain. And Batman looks big, and he does not look like Robert Pattinson. Now, I really hope they don't go the direction of Robert Pattinson. I like the idea of them having two separate movies. I like the realism of Robert Pattinson's world, and I like the craziness, the fantasy elements of the world that we're making within the DCU. I want those things to be separate, and it doesn't logically make sense at all, really, narrative-wise or any other way of thinking about it. It doesn't really make sense to make Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman, a part of this universe. So I'm really hoping they don't go that direction. We all know that there's things that James Gunn that says that's true, and there's things that James Gunn says that is a lie. And I really hope that they go the direction that's a little bit more truthful with everything he said, and hopefully those two things are separate. And this kind of leads me to believe that that is going to be the case. But we do get a cool look at him. He is very beefy, he is very big, and it makes me very excited to see who we may have in the future. So, at the end of this, that kind of ends the flashback, and we show that Dr. Phosphorus is not going to kill the child, that he's been playing with the child all night, that he thanks them for their time and asks them where the castle is. As he heads to the castle, everyone meets up with him, including Weasel. Now, earlier in the episode, before Weasel kind of walks away, he is kind of dreaming, and he's dreaming about the little girl that he tried to save back in episode 4, and he kind of then makes him think of the princess, and he goes off with the group, and what seems to be that they're all heading to kill the princess. And I think some of them may still be trying to kill the princess, but I think some of them may actually try to save the princess. One of them being Weasel. I could see Weasel at least initially trying to save the princess. I have a theory that the cut in the premonition, I think the cut on her face is actually from Weasel trying to save her, not actually trying to kill her. That's a theory I have. I don't know if that's going to come to pass, but I think Weasel is going there to actually maybe even try to save her, but he doesn't know the difference between enemies and friends, and I think when it comes down to it, we'll have to see what happens, but I do think he does have good intentions, and he actually wants to save the princess. Now, here's the biggest thing with this episode. because we only have one other episode left until the finale. Where is this going? What's the conclusion to this show? And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the conclusion is that she's actually evil and she has evil intentions. I don't know if the conclusion is that Gorilla Grodd is actually mind controlling her and he's going to be a secret character in this show. I don't know if it's all going to turn out just to be a lie and a trick from Cersei and woo, we dodged that bullet. I'm glad that didn't happen. I don't know what the ending is going to be, the conclusion is, and I don't know if it's going to make sense to wrap this all up in one last episode. In some ways, if you're going to have a secret villain, I almost feel like you deserve an episode to flesh that character out and flesh out why that character's doing what they're doing. Like you have all these other characters. I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't know how they're going to end it all. I know this next episode is going to deal with Nina and the backstory with Nina, and so I'm very curious how they're going to end this show. I really don't know, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's worked so far. And so I have high hopes for the ending of the season. I hope it ends just as well as it started, and we'll have to see where they go from there. But anyway, guys, what did you think about the show? Do you have criticisms? Do you have positives? Do you have theories? Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And guys, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, I hope you're having a good one. Peace.